Okay, you've learned a bit about the theory. You've played around with the theory, to a certain extent. We've had discussions on it. Now it's time to write about it because, of course, the theory is all well and good, but it's important that you're able to communicate the theory. You're able to apply it to literature. Theory only works if you're using it to understand or interpret literature that you're reading or seeing. So what I'd like to talk about today is just a framework that you can use for writing with this theory. And if you're up on the three-part quotation integration procedure, introduce, give the quotation, integrate, this is really just a development on that. So you should be pretty okay. But I want to give you a structure that will allow you to talk about Aristotle or really anybody else. All right, so the procedure, I'm going to give you step by step. First, you state the principle. It could be a definition of a term. It could be one of Aristotle's principles about the construction of character. You could say something like, the character must be good, or the character must be consistent. Or you could say, hamartia is this blindness, this ignorance that leads to a mistake. So it could be a definition of a term, but you introduce it, whatever it is. Give it to me, the reader. So you talk about Aristotle's principle in this regard. Remember, do not try to invoke his entire theory of tragedy. It is too big. Invoke a portion of it. Michael was just talking about whether or not the concept of anagnorisis can apply to Romeo and Juliet in the prince's speech. That's the kind of microanalysis that I'm talking about. And he's only talking about one portion of Aristotle's concept of tragedy. So introduce it, standard quotation techniques. Then move into your text. Text meaning the play, whatever you're trying to apply it to. So you are not simply talking about Aristotle's theory of tragedy, you are applying it to a specific text. So you've got to provide some transition. Then, give me the relevant support from the text. Could be a quotation, could be a paraphrase, I don't know. Depends upon where you're going. By the way, whenever I say, I don't know, it depends, forgive that vagueness, but when you're creative like this, when you are finding your own application of the theory, you will find out what the answer or the specifics are in that regard. So I'm glad that Michael brings up this example. When he's talking about anagnorisis, yes or no, in the prince's last speech, I think quotation support will be excellent when he's quoting that speech. But I'm about to give you an example that has no quotation support because it doesn't really deal with the same sort of issue. And then, of course, final step is the integration. Explain how that example demonstrates the theory. Show me very clearly how this example demonstrates this concept in sentences that join the two. All well and good, blah, 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 procedure, procedure. It comes clearly with an example. So let's talk about this example. Hamlet. You don't have to have read Hamlet to understand how I'm writing this. So I've just followed my own 4 steps to write this. I'll read it and show you where I'm going. Pardon me. Aristotle states that the character of tragedy must first and most important be good. He explains that in order for the audience to connect to the character, that character must demonstrate admirable qualities. In other words, tragedy would not work with a despicable villain as its hero. That's the principle. So I've just stated Aristotle. I've both quoted and paraphrased. Effectively, you should understand what Aristotle's saying about tragedy here. Shakespeare demonstrates this in Hamlet. Hamlet acts in a number of ways that make the audience sympathize with him. There's my transition. So this, which word in that first sentence links? Come on, Shakespeare demonstrates this in Hamlet. Which word links? No. This. The word this. Simple. Linking word. Shakespeare demonstrates this. There's my transition. He mourns his dead father, demonstrates tender affection for his lover, Ophelia, seeks to restore justice to his kingdom, and acts with true friendship toward Horatio. Most notably, however, Hamlet refrains from murdering his uncle in cold blood, despite his knowledge of his uncle's murderous guilt. In serving justice, Hamlet feels conflict because of his innate need to act with mercy in the eyes of his God. That's support. I've just paraphrased a number of qualities of Hamlet that are positive by summarizing actions. No quotation support necessary here because I'm not going micro on a speech, I'm going macro on trends of character. These characteristics allow the audience to see that Hamlet is well-intentioned as Aristotle requires. As he writes, the character will be good if the purpose is good. Hamlet, although beset by internal conflict, acts with moral purpose. He is a good character. That's my relationship between the text and the principle. It's my integration. It's how I tie everything together. And now I have one paragraph which is integrated to show how I've applied Aristotle's principle to a part of Hamlet. That's the four-step procedure that you can use to write about theory. A couple pieces of advice. Use the key terms that the theorist uses. And I want to actually specify this. It says italicize those terms only in certain cases. Italicize them when they are very much jargon. Somebody define jargon for me? Yeah, Omar. That's right. Specialized words used by a group of people in a specific area, concern, an industry, area of academics. The word good in reference to character, is it jargon or no? No. Good character, that's common person language. You don't need, that's not jargon. Give me one of Aristotle's terms that should be jargon. Yeah, catharsis. With a K, peripetia. Italicize these terms. To draw attention to their specific and central jargon nature within the discussion. If you're reading a critical journal article that is talking about Aristotle's theory and using one of his terms, one of those terms will very likely be italicized to draw attention to it. When you're relating the text to the theory, I don't know how you will do that, but you could do that in a number of different ways. I did this first one. The example could fit a theoretical definition. I said, good character. Hamlet fits the definition of good character. That's pretty simple and straightforward. You could prove a hypothesis. Maybe the theorist hypothesized something, and you could help lend support to that. You could challenge a theoretical assumption. Show that they have made a mistake. Or you could add a new idea the theorist had not considered. Once again, with Michael's example about anagnorisis, he could say this does fit the definition of anagnorisis, and therefore Shakespeare has included this moment of recognition that Aristotle predicted. Shakespeare does it in a novel way, perhaps, different from the ancient Greeks, but he still does it. Or you could say, no, actually Shakespeare deviates from Aristotle's theory, and therefore Aristotle's theory is not very enlightening when we're talking about Elizabethan tragedy. It's very enlightening when we're talking about Greek tragedy because it was written for that. I don't know. Where would Michael want to go with it? The point is that you are walking into areas where the truth is not necessarily set. It all comes in how well you write about it. So realize that in the relationship, you could work it out in a number of different ways, however you feel like it. As long as you're supporting it clearly with details in the text, you'll be fine. Questions about that process? Like I said, if you've been following along with writing skills throughout this year, this should be just a development on those same basic skills. And I know we've had a lot of time talking, so there's not much time for writing. But here's the task that I'd like. I want you to write a little one of these, just like I did with the Hamlet example, so a little paragraph. Your theory is Aristotle's theory of tragedy. Your text is Romeo and Juliet. Yes. So a couple of you talked about R&J already because it is your touchstone for tragedy. I want you to see how well you can apply Aristotle's theory of tragedy to that play. Obviously, you need no quotations because you don't have a copy in front of you. And I'd like you to use any of the material from Aristotle that you've got, notes from yesterday, notes from your reading of the website themselves. You may cite, or you must cite, any Aristotle quotation according to the paragraph number in the Butcher translation. So if you're citing them, just use the paragraph numbers. They're all numbered. Quotations are not required, but using them properly often enhances the clarity of your writing. But if you don't have a copy of it right here, that you're fine. You need not skip lines because I will not check this for Muggs issues. I will only check it for general content, how well you're putting into effect what I've asked you to do today. 8 sentences, no fewer. And we should have had more time to complete it in class, but see what you can get done. And if you can't finish it by the end of class, no worries, you will have some extra time. Julianne? Reading the theater links. So there, I believe there's only one link about Greek theater history on the website. Further questions?